Expectations were high at Ligier for 1992 because they were using the powerful Renault V10 engines for the first time. 1992, however, will prove to be a very disappointing season for the Ligier team. Now let's get into it.
Frenchman Érik Comas, the Formula 3000 champion, came into Formula 1 with Ligier, where he partnered the vastly experienced Thierry Boutsen.
So the first year we had a Lambo engine. The engine was never powerful. There was big difference between engine 1 and engine 2 and engine 3. You know, like sometimes there were 2.5 seconds a lap difference between the two engines.
At Hockenheim, Érik Comas had an enormous shunt.
More seriously, in Saturday practice, Érik Comas, the Frenchman, in his debut season with Ligier, was trying too hard and came to grief at the Ost curve, fortunately without injury. But it was an accident that provoked protests at the construction of the chicanes in use on the Hockenheim circuit.
I don't know what happened exactly. I was flat on 6 just before the second chicane here on Hockenheim.
The slow, unreliable Ligier Lamborghini scored 0 points in a dismal 1991 season. The new Ligier JS37 was designed by Frank Dernie and Gérard Ducarouge.
Exact. C'est exactement ça que j'ai expliqué dimanche. Le problème c'est que il faut que le tube bouge comme ça.
The new Ligier was powered by the superb Renault V10 engine, which had about 750 brake horsepower. The use of the Renault engines were not free, however. Team owner Guy Ligier had to pay $12 million for them. Meanwhile, multiple world champion Alain Prost would be testing the new Ligier Renault.
The season started amid speculation over the immediate future of Alain Prost. Fired from Ferrari at the end of '91, he was thought to be on the verge of joining the Ligier team. He did a lot of winter testing, often disguised in other drivers' helmets, but eventually decided against joining the team. He took a sabbatical year instead.
You know, he was just fast. He was going to completely destroy Thierry Boutsen that day, and he did. I mean, Thierry was completely sure the chassis had broken or something when he drove it and couldn't get any way. He was spinning off and also he was just nowhere near. And it demoralised Guy completely because I think Prost wanted the team, but he wanted it free. And we went to the first race with Prost's seat, pedals, everything, assuming Prost was driving. I got to the race and I didn't know that Prost wasn't the number one driver until I got to the race. We were contracted to have one lower engine than Williams, so there was no way we were going to beat them, however good our car was, to be honest. But if you looked at how much faster Prost was than Boutsen and looked at where Boutsen was on the grid, as Guy obviously did because he'd marked it on every sheet, we'd have been up there. No, I really think that had Alain joined Ligier, Ligier would still be up there, I think, because we were quick enough to be pretty competitive with everybody apart from Williams if he'd been driving it.
Ligier started the 1992 season with the same driver lineup as in 1991, Thierry Boutsen and Érik Comas.
Right, well, 72 laps. And it's go, and Mansell's got away extremely well as they go up to the first right-hander.
Murray, because in fact they're not using their auto start today. They deemed it too dangerous, too much of a risk of a stall. The software is not yet sorted out. But Williams 1 and 2, and this looks like a real tough uphill struggle for the McLaren. Senna is going to have to fight. A lazy charging in fourth place.
Yeah, and Nigel Mansell's in a very commanding position now because his teammates can, not deliberately, but make it very difficult for Ayrton Senna to get past. Of course, Riccardo Patrese wants to win this race just as much as anybody else does. There are no orders in the Williams team, but it is still Mansell leading, Patrese second. Senna is in third position. It is John Alesi in the Ferrari in fifth place. This how Ayrton Senna manages always to get more out of the McLaren than Berger. There is Berger, and behind him is Capelli. That is Johnny Herbert. Here is Comas coming towards us, followed by Boutsen and Wendlinger. Wendlinger going extremely well, leading Patrese now by 11 seconds, who is more than 6 seconds ahead of Senna, who is 2 seconds ahead of the battle between Alesi, Schumacher and Berger.
Yes, and Carl Wendlinger, of course, has shown considerable talent in the few outings he's had in Formula 3000. He's already eased up there, the two Ligiers in line astern, and they've now got Renault engines, which has certainly helped them. And there's the caption for the fastest. That is Johnny Herbert. So, in fact, if you take the two Williamses away, we've got a very close race going on behind them, because Senna leads the race for the others by 4.5 seconds from Alesi and Schumacher, who are right together. Berger and Capelli are shadowing them, and then Herbert, Comas and Boutsen are right there, as you can see. So it's really not a very big spread between Senna and Boutsen in 10th place.
These are the Ligiers of Boutsen and Comas, and it's a completely new Ligier. Ligier have got one of the largest budgets in Grand Prix racing, but it's the team that's done the least with the most in the recent past. They've had some pretty dreadful cars, but this new one, which looks very much like the Williams and was designed by Frank Dernie, has got a Renault engine. Last year they had the Lamborghini engine. So Comas and Boutsen, there is Thierry Boutsen, are using the same motive power as the two Williams leaders, Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. Two technicians in the pits as Boutsen again unsuccessfully tries to pass Gugelmin, who will have nothing of it as Senna closes on them. And those senders, now there is a retirement, and that looked to me as though Gugelmin slow. No, it's Boutsen. Thierry Boutsen, as he shaped up to pass Gugelmin, suddenly stopped and is out of the race.
We had the Renault engine, and I must say that I was very proud to develop that car from being almost a non-qualified to being in the top 6 on the grid. The car was very unreliable and was not very competitive, but also the Ligier was a racing team, yes, but it was not only a racing team. There was a lot of things happening behind the scene on the political side, and it was never a very competitive team because it did not have the basis of a real race team. There was no engineering place. There was an engineering department, but only French people working with French people. So the level of knowledge had nothing to do compared to an English team or to an Italian team. And when Gerard Ducarouge joined us, he tried to help that and to make it better, but he also was at the end of his career, so he didn't put as much effort in it as he would have done 10 years before. So motivation was missing. Technically, there was a lot of things missing. From the engineering side, it was also, so we could not have done better than what we did, I think. And in the end, mistakes that were made and misunderstandings and the lack of confidence in one another made it I didn't want to stay there.
The same spot, 6 laps later. Two Ligiers, Comas and Boutsen, disputing the same bit of tarmac. and they eliminated Johnny Herbert in the process as well. Friday morning was nice and sunny, but not for Érik Comas, who crashed heavily in the fast Blanchimont sweep before the pits. Ayrton Senna was the first to reach the scene of the crash, and he rushed to help the motionless Frenchman. Fortunately, Comas suffered only concussion and bruising, but he would take no further part in the Belgian Grand Prix.
This is Belgian Thierry Boutsen, 3 times a Grand Prix winner when he drove for Williams. Now you can tell that he has got a new set of tyres on his car because they still leave the delivery labels on them. You can see that white ring, and that is the label going round, and it will very rapidly wear off, of course, because Boutsen has got some 700 horsepower under his boot.
2 sets of tyres yet. There's still plenty of time to run 2 sets of tyres later in the session if the circuit should speed up, because I just had a quick look down the times, and of the significant runners, the nearest anybody has got is still over a second from their yesterday's time, and for that reason there's no point in taking any risks. I don't suppose that Mansell and the Williams team have got any more work to do on setting up their chassis. They would have done the race work this morning, and their only interest this afternoon will be improving their qualifying time, and at the moment that looks out of reach.
Thierry Boutsen, that you're looking at in the Ligier, won the Australian Grand Prix in 1989 for Williams and was then stood down by them as no longer required on this or any future trip, and he rejoined the Ligier team. He joined the Ligier team initially to use the Lamborghini engine, knowing that they were going to have the dominant Renault engine this year. But even with the Renault engine, the Ligier team have been a great disappointment, and it's a very downcast, disheartened Thierry Boutsen here in Adelaide, because he has not yet got a drive organised for 1993, and he's obviously worried about his ability to do so. But the news now is that as I speak to you, Ayrton Senna is emerging the pit lane. There he is.
In the final driver standings, Érik Comas finished 11th and Thierry Boutsen 14th. In the team championship table, Ligier Renault finished 8th, which was far lower than expected at the beginning of the season. In the following 1993 season, Ligier continued with the Renault engines, and surprisingly 2 British drivers. But that's a story for another video. Thanks for watching.